The winds of change often move very slowly. Right now, a hurricane of reckoning around the globe as Columbus's Confederates and colonists cast in metal continue to fall. Let's start with Columbus. In St. Louis and Richmond, Virginia, statues of Columbus have been torn down, the latter thrown in a lake. Columbus State Community College in Columbus, Ohio, removed a Columbus statue from campus. Protesters defaced a statue in Miami, cut its head off over in Boston. Meanwhile, armed groups continue to guard Columbus statues in New York and Philly. Things not going so well for various Confederates and slave owners either. John McDonough, who was a wealthy merchant, slave owner, slumlord, and philanthropist, his statue was torn down and escorted to the Mississippi River. It's reported the statue was recovered by citizens and kept in a secret location for now. Spirit of the Confederacy statue in Houston removed. Edward Carmack in Nashville knocked over. Other Confederate memorials are being guarded. Here's Robert E. Lee in Richmond following graffiti and a picture of George Floyd being projected on the statue. This groundswell of revisionist history, it's not isolated in the U.S. Winston Churchill's statue was defaced and later put in a box in London. Slave trader Edward Colston's statue was thrown in the harbor in Bristol, England. That prompted officials to take down a statue of slave trader Robert Milligan off its plinth in East London. More protests in Belgium, Belgium again, South Africa, New Zealand, all this sparked by him. With so much being torn down amid so much going down, there is one statue going up in Galveston, Texas, where the freedom of slaves was first announced in Texas, the birthplace of Juneteenth.
Another one to mention here in the state of Kentucky, it's actually in the Kentucky State Capitol building this week. The statue of Jefferson Davis, the lone president of the Confederacy, was removed. A statue put up in the 1930s of a man who once claimed slavery was a moral, social, and political blessing.